History of the television. Television can be found in millions of homes around the world, but 100 years ago, nobody even knew what a television was. In fact, as late as 1947, only a few thousand Americans owned television.
How did such a groundbreaking technology turn from a niche invention to a living room mainstay? Today, we are explaining the history of the television. But before it, what is World Television Day?
In 1996, the United Nations General Assembly declared November 21 World Television Day. The UN recognized television as having an increased impact on decision making as well as being an ambassador for the entertainment industry. Television is a symbol of communication and globalization that educates, informs, entertainment, and influence our decision and opinion. So for more detail, let's see this video.
It's 1923 in the seaside town of Hastings, England. Inventor John Logie Baird is hoping the fresh sea air will improve his chronic bad health. It better. Baird is a genius, but his health problems and his life of inventing have left him seriously broke.
My father came across as being rather withdrawn and not quite with it. You would say something to him and he wouldn't necessarily respond to it because he would be thinking of something else. But he was always polite.
Baird has been inventing ingenious gizmos and gadgets all his life. His chemically saturated damp-proof socks for the troops in the trenches were surprisingly successful. But his inflatable pneumatic shoes never made him a penny. By the time he hits Hastings, he's out of money. But Baird has an idea that just might let him invent his way out of his predicament.
Here he was with £100 left, and he had to think of something, and that was television.
What Baird is imagining is a huge technological leap. Transmitting sound over great distances by radio is still new. So transmitting moving pictures seems like science fiction. So how do you capture a moving image and transmit it through thin air? He sketches a device he hopes will work. He starts with a disc fitted with a spiral of perfectly spaced holes. Powered by an electric motor, the disc will spin in front of an image. As it spins, each hole in the spiral allows a tiny slice of the image to pass through. A light sensor picks up these little image slices and converts them into a series of electrical pulses. The pulses are transmitted by radio waves to a receiver that reads the signal of the pulses and reconstructs the original image on a second spinning disc. Baird gets to work using a bunch of scavenged parts: knitting needles, a bike light lens, a biscuit tin, and a hat box.
He started from scratch, really, with television. He bought a few components, he sort of put them together in his bedroom.
The hat box lid turns into a circular scanning disc with a spiral pattern of holes. He'll spin it on a knitting needle shaft. Piece by piece, he assembles it, using coffin wood from a local undertaker as a base. It's finally ready to be tested. Baird has staked everything on his tiny spinning pinpoints of light. Baird sets up a simple cross in front of the scanning disc. He syncs up the receiving disc at the opposite side of the room and watches to see what his crazy contraption can do. As if by magic, it appears. As the receiving disc spins, it reassembles the shadowy shape of the cross. Baird is ecstatic. It proves his basic assumptions are correct. But a clear image is still a long way off.
It took him a little longer than he thought it would. It took him several years.
By 1924, Baird is now living in London, which gives him better access to equipment, but the smoggy air is disastrous for his health. In a Soho flat, still penniless, he works day and night. Slowly but surely, the blurry shapes get a little clearer, a bigger scanning disc, a more sensitive selenium light sensor to create better detail in the electrical pulses, and above all, a lot more light. But he still can't find the right combination to produce photographic gradients of gray. It's key. Without those tones, he can't create a recognizable human face.
He was beginning to lose heart. This was in late 1925. And his backer, he had a backer at that point, was becoming very impatient and wanted out.
It's October 1925. The day starts out like so many before it. For the umpteenth time, Baird places the head of a ventriloquist's dummy in front of the scanning disc. He floods the room with light as the scanning disc begins to spin. But this time, things will be different. Over in a separate screening room, there appears on the synchronized receiving disc, out of nowhere, the world's first ever detailed television image. He's finally got the magic combination. Baird knows at once it's a major breakthrough.
He could hardly believe his eyes, and it came as quite a shock when it eventually came.
Baird can't wait to do a test with a real human subject, the office boy from downstairs. 20-year-old William Tainton is terrified. He sits confused as Baird rushes back to the screening room. As the discs sync up, Baird instructs him to move his mouth.
William, stick out your tongue!
William Tainton, the first human face ever to be seen on TV. John Logie Baird and his miraculous new invention have arrived. This first recorded image from Baird's TV only has 30 lines of resolution, compared to over 500 on standard TVs today. But the features are recognizable in shades of gray. Baird takes his television public. The first tiny screens are a sensation. Within 4 years, the BBC transmits its first official TV broadcast using Baird's mechanical system.
But in a very quiet way, I'm extremely proud of what my father did.
Thanks to the relentless determination of John Logie Baird, the world now has television. The global village is born.